again, friends. Today we're going to start reading the Bible, actually, and start with Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so I thought it would be fun as our first, technically our first Bible lesson. Everything else I've done up to here is preparing us for this moment. And I'm going to compare creation stories from older cultures. The Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 300 BC, and they were nearly complete texts of the Old Testament. So these stories that we read, we know that they are at least 2,300 years old. And so I think that they have stood the test of time. And so we're going to look at some other creation stories from other cultures that are also a couple thousand years old and see how they did. Those will be the worldview of the Hindus, which included the world turtle, the Maidu, which is a North American Indian tribe, but they are not alone in their particular creation belief. It was actually shared by many North American tribes, a similar story. Theirs is representative, that's for sure. There's also the Cherokee. They have a good creation story. And one that I learned in my youth, believe it or not, this stuff was actually taught to us in elementary school, and my fourth grade teacher covered this one. The Norse, in other words, the Vikings, the Norse mythologies, they believed in a giant tree called Yggdrasil. Finally, there's the modern theory of the creation of the known universe called the Big Bang Theory. I'm sure you've heard of it. Yes, it's the same theory that gave rise to the TV show. And then finally, we're going to examine the Bible's account of creation and see how it stacks up against our knowledge today. So first, I'd like to share with you the picture of the world turtle belief by the Hindus. They believe that the earth sat upon 4 elephants, who in turn sat upon a giant turtle that moseyed on through a vast plain of the universe. I am pretty sure that this account of the way the world is has been discredited. And then thanks to the Bing image creation, it came up with this kind of cool Cherokee, Maidu, yeah. I guess I just said an Indian coyote singing and bringing into creation all the earth. So the Maidu coyote creation story, at the beginning of time, a primal being called Earthmaker is floating on the infinite waters, remember that, when Coyote calls out to him. Together they sing to create the world. After it is completed and Earthmaker has created the people, Coyote vows to spoil the world and introduce evil to it. Earthmaker orders the people to destroy Coyote, but despite their best efforts, Coyote uses supernatural trickery to outwit them. In the end, Earthmaker is forced to recognize that Coyote's power is equal to his own. So clearly in this particular story, the coyote represents like the devil, and Earthmaker represents the creator, God the Father. What's interesting to me, or what I'd like to call out, is the fact that Earthmaker is floating on infinite waters. That seems to be a common theme. And then together they sing. In the biblical account, God speaks, and the earth is created. And then it's interesting that the devil quickly turns around and wants to spoil the world by introducing evil into it. So those are all themes that are repeated in the Bible. The Cherokee Indians also had an interesting creation story regarding a great buzzard. This creation story centers around the animals that all lived in the sky until the sky got too crowded. They sent the great buzzard down to find land, and the great buzzard flew over the surface of the earth, which was made of mud, seeking dry land, flapping his wings, and wherever his wings touched the primordial mud, mountains and valleys were created. So if you have this vision in your mind on what that primordial mud looked like, it probably looked like a vast expanse of a plain, if you will. Maybe it was a little bit glassy looking, since it was mud. Had a shine to it, who knows? But it's an interesting visual to get in your head. Oh, and I'm also pretty sure that we don't believe that the great buzzard created the earth nowadays, nor the coyote. In Norse mythology, which is one of my favorites, my dad liked to say that, this is Thor, he's my guy, So let's just read this really quickly. The cosmos in Norse mythology consists of 9 worlds that flank a giant central sacred tree, Yggdrasil. Units of time and elements of the cosmology are... Thanks, Kitty. Various forms of the... Units of time and elements of the cosmology are personified as deities or beings. Various forms of a creation myth are recounted, where the earth is created from the flesh of the primordial being Ymir, and the first 2 humans are Ask and Embla. These words are foretold to be reborn after the events of Ragnarok, when an immense battle occurs between the gods and their enemies, and the world is enveloped in flames, only to be reborn anew. There, the surviving gods will meet, and the land will be fertile and green, and 2 humans will repopulate the world. Now, this is where it gets weird. In Norse mythology, Ymir, also called Argelmir, Brimir, or Blaine, is the ancestor of all Jotnar. Ymir is attested in the Poetic Edda, compiled in the 13th century from earlier traditional material in the Prose Edda, written by Snorri Sturluson in the 13th century, and in the Poetry of Skalds. Taken together, several stanzas from 4 poems collected in the Poetic Edda refer to Ymir as a primeval being who was born from Aether. It's yeasty venom that dripped from the icy rivers called the Elavagar and lived in the grassless void of Ganug Agap. Ymir gave birth to a male and female from his armpits, and his legs together begat a 6-headed being. The grandsons of Buri, the gods Odin, Vili, and Ve, fashioned the earth, elsewhere personified as a goddess Joro, from his flesh, from his blood the ocean, from his bones the mountains, from his hair the trees, from his brains the cloud, and his skull the heavens, and from his eyebrows the middle realm in which mankind lives. Midgard, in addition, one stanza relates that the dwarves were given life by the gods from Ymir's flesh and blood, or the earth and the sea. I got this from Wikipedia, but I remember being taught about this, like I said, in elementary school, back when they actually had really interesting stuff. I mean, I thought this was pretty interesting. But again, I believe that nobody believes that the 9 worlds are suspended by a giant tree nowadays. So this creation myth has been largely discredited and fallen into unbelief, basically. Now the Big Bang Theory. This is modern. This is what we believe nowadays from our physicists like Stephen Hawking and Carl Sagan and such like, Albert Einstein, is that we believe that the universe began from a primeval atom. This model, and then blew up or something such like that, this model explains certain observed phenomena, such as the abundance of light elements, the cosmic microwave background radiation, the so-called flatness problem, explained through cosmic inflation. But anyway, I'm sure you're all familiar with it. And one thing I do want to point out is that the bosonic particle. Here I've got the picture of the 2 actually. It's bosons and fermions are the 2 smallest known particles. And hadrons are basically a hybrid of a boson and a fermion. But a boson is a photon, or a photon is a boson. So that makes a photon, which is a particle of light, the smallest and thus the most atomic piece of matter or piece of mass or whatever in the whole universe. It's the smallest thing. And just so in case you're wondering, this is the little cat causing all the problems. She's a little kitten. She's very rambunctious. Hope you enjoyed her. Anyway, so my point in bringing this up is that the photon is the smallest particle in the known world. So this brings us to the Genesis creation story. And so let's go through it. I thought I'd come up with this handy chart so we can observe what God said he created on what day. On the first day, he created light. On the second day, he created the seas and the clouds. On the third day, he created earth and grass. On the fourth day, he made specifically the stars, the sun, and the moon. On the fifth day, he created fish and birds. On Friday, he created animals and mankind. And then on the 7th day, he rested. That should be familiar to most of us by now. And this is just something I thought was pretty interesting. If you study Japanese, they do have the certain symbols that they use for the days of the week, and they are the sun, the moon, fire, water, trees and wood, metal and earth. And I thought, except for the fish and birds and animals and man, these elemental symbols that the Japanese use for the days of the week correspond roughly to the creation steps that God took in the book of Genesis. And I'm not saying it's exact or anything like that. I'm just saying I thought it was kind of interesting. So we have the sun, we have the moon, we have fire, we have water, then we have trees, and we have earth. So that's, 6 out of the 7. That's pretty good, or pretty interesting. And so now I'd like to point out that it basically, what I think is interesting is that none of this is incompatible with today's science. As much as scientists would love to say, oh, we've proven the Bible false. No, you haven't. If anything, you've fortified it. Because now we know that light was the first thing that God said. He said, let there be light. And we also know that that's the way it pretty much had to be. Because light is the smallest particle. Photons are the smallest particles in the universe. Then he created the seas and the clouds, which basically just means he created air, clouds, and water. And we know that had to exist before life could exist. And then the very next thing he did was create earth and grass. So you got to have earth and soil so you can grow grass. And then he created more lights, more specifically. So we have night and day. And then he created fish and birds, and then animals and man. And I find it interesting because if you've studied evolution, that's the way it had to happen. You had to have light first, then you had to have earth, then you had to have water, then earth, then you had to have fish and birds, or plants, then fish, then mammals. Had to happen that way. And that's the way Genesis shows that it does. So I find that interesting. So let's read it, and let's fortify what I've just said with the actual text from the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Genesis 1, verse 1. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. This is what I'm saying. Imagine you're a prophet and you're receiving a vision of how God created the universe. This is probably what he saw. Just like, it's interesting that this same image, I think, was closely seen in the North American creation stories we saw. That there was this like vast plain. You remember the great buzzard that flew over it? And then I think the story about the coyote did say that there was this vast plain of water. Anyway, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. So God is now, he's the artist writing on his tapestry of the universe, right? And God saw the light, and it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and morning were the first day. The second day. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Basically, he's creating the sky. And the clouds are the firmament up above, and the sea is the firmament below. And God made the firmament, divided the waters which were under the firmament. Well, you know what I mean. God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament, the sea, and the waters which were above the firmament, the clouds. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Another interesting twist of words in Japanese, the word for heaven is the same word for sky. And I kind of think that that's what God is talking about here, but the third day. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, and herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind, and God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. And here we also have just a tiny bit of science, but the author is showing us that they certainly understood how life had to begin. It had to begin with grass and with herbs. And the trees, they had to be able to reproduce. And that's what all this is saying. Whose seed is in itself inside the fruit. And lo and behold, yes, it is. And it's still that way today. Day 4. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, that'd be the sun, and the lesser light to rule the night, that would be the moon. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So I think we can modify what we believe in heaven. It's just all that stuff that's up there. You know what I mean? The sky all the way out. And the evening and the morning were the 4th day. On the 5th day, and God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creatures that have life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales, and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind. And now notice he's saying this because, it's like saying cats begat cats, dogs beget dogs, and whales beget whales. And he's like firmly saying it right here. And we know this to be true. Which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let the fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the 5th day. And also we've learned from geneticists, and even from Charles Darwin and the evolutionists, that that's exactly correct. You never can have a cat and a dog breed and get some kind of, cog or dat. It just doesn't happen. There's some problem with the DNA. You can do it interspecies, like, lions and tigers, which is why we have that designation. If they're all cats, then yeah, they can breed. But I think also, I don't know, has anyone ever bred a, house cat with a... They have bred them with lynxes and tiny cats, like civet cats. But anyway, size matters. Onward to the 6th day. And God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and the beast of the earth after his kind, and it was so. Once again, that theme, you got to be a cattle to give birth to a cattle. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and the cattle after their kind. That's exactly what I just said. And everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and God saw that it was good. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and said unto them, be fruitful, and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to every thing that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the 6th day. So I do want to point out one excellent thing here, and that's right here. And Genesis 1:26. God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth. When I read that as a young child, I thought to myself, yeah, but we don't have control over sharks. And I remember when I was like 12 or 13 years old, I saw the first video of someone in a scuba outfit feeding a shark by hand in one of those, Sea Worlds. And I was like, oh my gosh, I guess we do have dominion over the sharks. They're sitting there feeding them out of their hand, which is pretty amazing. But we are, of course, obviously the dominant species. We have had trouble with some, like polar bears and lions, but for the most part, we are completely the dominant species. No other species has written poetry. No other species has been to the moon, but we have. So we rule, and that's all there is to that. We do have dominion over the earth. On the 7th day, Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. This would be Saturday. And it's interesting to point out that here we are, 6,000 years later after this was written, and we're still crashing on Saturdays. We still take the seventh day of the week and don't want to work on it. So I think that's pretty cool. I think that it's amazing that we still have a 7-day week, even though this was written like 6,000 years ago. And also, I posit that the steps that God took, creating light, then water, then light, then the sun and the moon and stars, and water, plants, animals, then mankind, I maintain that that follows a path of evolution that we've found to be true. And I'd like to compare that to the other ancient cultures that just basically made up stuff. And the reason why I believe that the Bible story is that it can withstand scientific investigation is that it was true, that this actually really happened this way. Now, did it happen in every day was 24 hours? I don't know. That's the way the story was told, okay? I mean, if you read it, day and night wasn't even invented until the fourth day. It's God's story. You can tell it any way you like. And in this way, I understand it, and so I'm good with it. So two other things I'd like to point out that are also in the Old Testament. One is in Job. And this is Job talking about how awesome God is. And he says, "He stretcheth out the north over the empty place, and hangeth the earth upon nothing." So in other words, Job, this ancient man, I mean, we're talking 5,000 years ago, he had this revelation that the earth was sitting in the middle of a universe, hanging on nothing. And finally, when Job and his 3.5 friends, I say 3.5 because the fourth kid that spoke was actually not one of the 3 main friends. It was just some guy listening, and he started talking too. So after those 5 men had all stopped blabbing about why Job had all this suffering, then God showed up and said, and this is the very first thing he says, "Oh yeah? You're trying to talk about me? Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if you have understanding." And that's the fact. Whatever we want to believe about the creation of the universe, one thing we do know, that nobody alive today was there when it happened. And so with that thought, and with my own contention that the creation story stands up under scientific scrutiny, I'll say till next time, everybody. You guys all take care. Where's my outro? Oh well, for some reason it's not playing, but see you next time. We'll be covering Genesis chapter 2 and 3, which is, of course, the Garden of Eden.